Alright, good morning guys. Wednesday the 17th of April, just coming up to 8:45.
Right.
And we are on our way to the paint supply store. We're going to buy our supplies to get the drifter prepped for paint, and we're going to buy our paint as well as some masking supplies, probably some body supplies, etc. So it's going to be an expensive morning, I suspect, although I don't need a lot of paint or a lot of primer for this bike. So anyway, we'll tell you what we picked up when we get back. Alright guys, Wednesday, April 17th, just coming up to 2 p.m. And sometimes there's not enough time in the day. Seems like the day gets away from you pretty quickly. Anyway, we made our run to the supply shop, and we picked up our supplies for painting this bike. So I'll just take you through quickly what we've got. We've got the Shopline multi-purpose primer. We're planning on just scuffing up the surface of the fenders and priming over them and then painting. We're hoping not to go too deep on the plastic, so we'll just want to scuff up the factory paint on these fenders because they're in pretty good shape. The only repair that needs to be done on the whole bike pretty much is that dent in the tank. It's a metal tank. They are plastic fenders, so I'm a lot more familiar with working with metal than I am with plastic, so I have a little less problem dealing with the tank than I do with the fenders. I'm a little bit leery about painting the fenders, but I'm sure it'll be okay. Anyway, so we've got the Shopline primer. We've got the base coat, which is going to be a matrix product. So we've got the factory black, they call it factory black base coat for the top side of the bike. And we've got a Wimbledon white for the bottom side of the bike. So we're going to two-tone this, black and white. And we've got the Matrix MSV25 for the clear coat. It's a quick cure clear coat. And a few other items we bought, just some smaller masking paper, some 220 discs for the DA. We got some fine line tape for masking out our two-tone. We got some gray Scotch-Brite scrubbies to scuff up those areas that are hard to get to. Some paint strainers. I got a little bit of a pinstripe here. If I was thinking of doing a little small dividing pinstripe between the white and the black, you'll see what I mean when we get to it. I may not put that on, but I thought I'd grab it while I could. And the other thing, I just picked up this fishing line here is intended to be used to take the stock Vulcan drifter badges off the tank. So use fishing line to do that. And we'll go through that process a little bit later on. And we've got a precision hobby knife, so a little X-Acto knife. And the reason I bought that is where we left off last night was on the rear fender, or sorry, on the front fender, and the pinstriping has a factory clear coat on it, which is unusual. It may not be unusual, but it was unusual that the rear fenders didn't have any clear coat over the pinstripe, so they come off here very easily. So this has a clear coat over this, and the tank has the clear coat, which I would sort of expect on the metal. So what we're planning on doing is trying to, I've got two options. I've got to sand this fender down a little bit anyway to make the primer stick, so technically I could just sand off these pinstripes, but that sounds like it's going to take quite a bit of time, and you got to be very careful. Obviously, I don't want to go down to the base plastic. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is maybe try to, take the X-Acto knife, do just a really, really shallow cut along the edges of the graphics, and then take a heat gun and sort of slowly peel that back. There's going to be base coat paint underneath it, I'm pretty sure. There'd have to be. So that's what we're looking to get down to, is just a base coat, and then we'll continue on with our prep, scrubbing it down with 220 and the gray Scotch-Brites for the primer coat. So that's what we're up to right now. We're going to try to remove that pinstripe and see how well we do. We'll be careful. Oh, I did forget to mention it's also been a good day so far because my tires showed up. So I've got my Whitewell tires have arrived. My solo seat showed up today, so I've got my solo seat. I had a few things show up at my, I have a US mailbox, and a few things showed up there that I'll have to go pick up. So yeah, things are coming together, and things are being delivered, so yeah, happy day. Well, that really turned out to be nothing to worry about at all. All basically you got to do is just start the end, just get the end to lift up a little bit, and apply some gentle heat all the way along as you're pulling on it, and they'll come up nicely. I got them, pretty much full strips. So there's definitely a clear coat ridge there, but like I said, we're going to be sanding this down anyway. So I guess the next step is to start sanding this beautiful factory paint. You can actually see where it's faded a little bit. or it's got darker actually, it looks like. So I'm not sure if the clear made it a little bit darker, but anyway, different shade of red under the pinstripes for sure. Alright guys, we'll go ahead and we'll break out the 220 grit. Quick shot of my white walls, that obviously are blue walls currently, need to be cleaned. They are Continental Legends, I believe, in the stock, the factory sizes, so front and rear. So there you go. So those will look good on the bike when it's done. Alright guys, we've got the first fender, the front fender, scuffed down, and we've got the pinstripes removed. We went through a little bit here and a little bit there, but not too bad, so I don't think that's going to be any kind of an issue. And it looks good on the other side too. So this needs a good wash. We're going to wash it down with soap and water, wipe it down with grease and wax remover. I usually like to do a final wipe with rubbing alcohol before we go to primer. But I think what we'll do is we'll get the other fender prepped as well, because we'll probably paint the two fenders at the same time at least. We'll probably do the two fenders and some of the small little bits that need to go on the bike, and we'll leave the tank to last. I've got limited space, so I think we'll do fenders, small bits together, and the tank last. I probably should mention as well that unless you're a professional body man, and I'm definitely not, I'm an amateur, I'd suggest you don't do the DA. It's way too aggressive. I stopped basically after I started, and I just got the block set. I've got a number of different soft blocks, hard blocks here that I've been sanding with. So I'd suggest you go with the blocks and hand sand. I've got the gray Scotch-Brites for the shiny bits where it's hard to sand. So in here, and we'll probably give it another quick scuff anywhere I see shininess, like in here. We'll give it another quick scuff with the Scotch-Brite pad before we go to final prep and paint. And a quick last look of the red fender before it's no longer red, sunbeam red. So we'll go ahead and we'll scuff this down. We'll remove these stickers over here. I do have photos of these, but I'm going to remove them. Not going to go so well with the black paint. So I thought about taping over them, but I think we'll just take them right off. Alright, just come up to 6:30, and we've got the rear fender all sanded down. The paint was definitely a lot thinner on the rear fender than it was on the front. So you can see where we've gone through to the, I'm not sure if that's black primer or whether that's the actual plastic, but I'm not too worried about it. So it's basically a small section. So that's what that side looks like. The other side looks pretty much the same. Needs a good cleaning on the other side. So yeah, we're ready to go on this. I would say we'll just put it on the floor next to the other one when we'll get those small triangular finishing pieces out, and we'll sand those down. As I mentioned, we're going to paint them at the same time. Okay, a few more parts prepped and ready to go. We're going to take them inside actually and wash them in the sink in hot water. These have some road grime on the back of them, so I want these to be completely clean. So we'll bring them in the house and scrub them down. Make sure there's no grease left on them on the inside or outside. And we'll have to do the same for the fenders, although that's going to take place outside. If they'd fit in my sink inside, I'd do it, but they don't. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll probably call it a night, and we'll get back out here tomorrow. Alright, good morning guys. Thursday, April 18th, just coming up to 7:45, and back out in the garage this morning working on the drifter project. And I think what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get the fenders and some of the smaller parts into primer today. So I think what we'll do first is we're going to take these fenders inside down to the basement to the wash tub down there, and we're going to give them a good wash with soap and water. And just clean them inside and outside. I don't want to get any of the, got some road dirt on the inside of the fenders that I want to get cleaned off so it didn't get into my paint eventually. So it's probably a good time to do that now before we go any further. So that's the first thing I'm going to do this morning. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move some parts out of the garage since we're going to be priming in here, so all of this stuff doesn't need to get any primer overspray on it. So we'll move that stuff to a safer location. And then as it gets a little warmer during the day, it's supposed to be a high of 19 degrees Celsius today. So it's getting close to, I don't know, 60, 65, somewhere around there, 70 degrees. So it's just at the bottom end of where I should be painting or priming. So that's the plan for today anyway. So we'll get started. Don't have much time. Alright guys, all the parts are cleared out of the garage and stowed away. So the next job for us is to take a look at the tank, and the first thing I need to do is drain the old gas out of it before we get it up on the workbench. So I think we'll go ahead and do that now. We'll get it up on the workbench and we will attempt to remove those Vulcan Drifter badges. Alright guys, just about to strip the Vulcan Drifter emblems off the tank. They're just plastic emblems, so I'm going to do a little WD-40 spray, see if I can start loosening some of the adhesive around the backing. I may give it a little heat with the heat gun, and then we'll get the fishing line out, which I bought yesterday somewhere. We'll get the fishing line out, and then we'll just run the fishing line behind the back of the badge once we get the top started a little bit, and that should be able to get the badge off without, hopefully without breaking it. So I'm not sure whether we're going to use these badges again, but I definitely want to keep them in good condition if possible. All right, that wasn't too bad. The fishing line trick worked. Here's the back of the badge, and just a little bit of adhesive left there on the tank. We'll get the heat gun going and a little bit more WD-40. Got a plastic scraper over there, and we'll scrape that residue off, and we'll move on to the other side. So I've been rethinking my use of the heat gun here, since obviously the gas has been removed from the tank, but there's still some gas vapors, even though I have a cloth on the top of the tank. And I'm probably thinking that even having a heat gun around the tank is probably not a good idea, even if there are some gas fumes escaping. So we're going to forego the use of the heat gun and see if we can just use the WD-40. I think what I'm going to have to do though is I'm probably going to have to do some research and maybe actually flush this tank with water, and then obviously I'm going to need to blow dry that out and let it dry before adding gas back into it. But I'd feel better working on this tank if it was completely clean and free of fuel vapors, because I think I'm going to need the heat gun obviously to get this pinstripe off. So maybe we'll do a little bit of investigation on what I should do as far as working with a heat gun around this tank in its condition that it's in. So we're going to do forego the heat treatment of the badge on this side, and we're just going to use the fishing wire and the WD-40. I just want to give you a quick look at this tank on this side, and here is the dent I was talking about. The very tiny dent here that needs to be fixed, and I believe that's from where the key swung back in the gas cap and nicked the tank here. And there's also a tiny little dent up the front here that I need to take care of. Other than that, the tank's in pretty good shape. Okay, done a little bit of research on gas tanks and removing gas and gas fumes, etc. And I've come to the conclusion that we're not going to do anything, and we're not going to introduce any heat at all. Blow dry or heat gun doesn't matter to this tank. So we're just going to have to try to remove this adhesive the best we can with some WD-40 and some patience. And then when it comes to removing this pinstripe, well, we're just going to have to sand that off. So we're just going to hand sand that. Obviously, we're not going to go down to bare metal. We're not going to create any sparks, so we'll just be considerate of that when we're sanding. So that's pretty much about it. So we're going to progress on trying to remove this adhesive one way or the other. Okay, I've pretty much got all my pieces ready to prime. I've got them wiped down with grease and wax remover, and then my final step is normally to do rubbing alcohol. So we've done that on the fenders over here, set up on the sawhorses, and they're ready to go. We'll just give them a quick blow off with compressed air before we continue on with the primer. Other than that, I think we're ready. We're going to mix some primer up, and we'll get the gun ready, and we'll go ahead and shoot these before it gets too cool out. Alright guys, just checking on the drying progress on the fenders and little bits. And looks like they're drying not too badly. Spraying went okay. I got a few runs here and there, but not bad. All in all, I'm pretty happy. Got one big run on the other fender, a little run here. But for the most part, it looks pretty good. Just want to make sure they're completely dry before I start to wet sand. There's the big run here. So we'll have to sand that out. Other than that, it looks pretty good. Had a little trouble on one of the small parts. The caliper guard got a bit of a splat on it, but other than that, the other couple pieces look good. So those will all go into white base coat and then clear coat eventually when we get the weather to be able to paint again. So yeah, I think what I'll do now is I'll start working on sanding down the tank, which we'll have over here. So I've already taken some photos of it, some references of the current pinstripe or decal that's on there. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to mask this tape out yet, whether I'm going to do a teardrop in the tank or whether I'm just going to do you know, a completely front to back sort of paint separation. We'll have to decide. I'm sort of leaning towards the teardrop, but obviously that means more work. But we'll wait and see. Anyway, the first thing we've got to do is get that prepped for primer. And I obviously got to fix those couple small dents in there as well, so it needs a little bit of body work done to it. So I think what we'll do is we'll start on that at least, and that'll be our project for tonight. We'll see how far we get, and then maybe we can probably start wet sanding these tomorrow, and then wait for a day where we can actually get the paint on them. Alright guys, we're making pretty good progress on the tank. We've got the pinstripe removed. Obviously where the bare metal is, that's where the pinstripe was. Unfortunately, that's what happened when I sanded the pin down. I couldn't keep the paint underneath it. It was pretty thin, so we're going to do a little self-etching primer in the bare metal spots before we hit it with the high build primer. What we're going to do now though is we're going to fix those two little dents that we talked about. So we're going to sand this area here down to about 80 grit and a little area up here down to 80 grit. Apply the filler and then we'll feather that out, and everything will be good. We'll keep going. Alright guys, just coming up to 20 to 8, and I think we'll call it a night out here. I'm going to have some dinner. Anyway, our body work's done on those two areas and sanded down, feathered out. So we're good to go on the tank. Just a few more touch-ups here and there on the underside of the tank or on the edges. We're just going to gray Scotch-Brite that and make it dull before we go to primer. And like I said, I'm going to etch prime the bare metal before we go to the 2K primer on top of that. So that will be for another day.